We are now recording. I'm Kelly Corey. I am the host of the Boldly Lead series and the director of the Master of Arts in Leadership program here at the University of Olivet. And I am here with my colleagues to share with you some fantastic information that you can use as you boldly lead in terms of self-care for you and the folks that you work with out in the world. We have with us today Dr. Denny Frank. Denny is a professor and program director of counselor education and supervision and the professor and program director. I have it down there twice. I'm sorry. Professor, Program Director of Counselor Education and Supervision here at the University of Olivet. Dr. Frank has been a counselor educator and a supervisor for more than 20 years, and he's the founding director of the online Master of Arts in Counseling program here at the University of Olivet in Michigan. Dr. Frank's areas of expertise are sexual orientation and gender identity, multicultural counseling, marriage and family therapy, counseling ethics, psychodiagnosis, and counselor professional development. Dr. Frank is an alumnus of Olivet College. He joined the university in September of 2022, and we're so glad to have him here. Combined with his clinical experience as a marriage and family therapist, he's worked as an addictions counselor and a crisis counselor and a counselor in the adult and juvenile criminal justice incarceration systems. Hard work and important work. Thank you for that work that you've done in our communities. Additionally, Dr. Frank is proud to be a founding member of Chicago Hopes for Kids. It's a 501c3 nonprofit education organization that provides academic tutoring and enrichment activities to children living in Chicago homeless shelters. Dr. Frank received his PhD in counselor education and supervision from the College of William and Mary in Virginia and his Master of Arts in clinical mental health counseling from Rollins College. Dr. Brittany Turner is here with us as well. She is the founding director of social work at the University of Olivet. She officially joined the university in 2022 also. She graduated from the University of Olivet College in 2015 with a degree in psychology. She then received her master's degree in social work in 2016 from the University of Southern Carolina, and her doctorate in social work from Capella in 2022. Dr. Turner has experience in social work practice with adults, children, transplant, medical health, psychotherapy, case management, substance use disorders, incarcerated persons, and psychosis and personality disorder specialties. Dr. Turner, that's a lot of hard work and a lot of opportunities to help folks grow and move forward in their lives. Thank you for investing in that work that you've done in our communities. In her free time, Dr. Turner enjoys poetry, traveling, hot tea, spending time with her French bulldog and her family. Thank you both for spending time with us today, and thank you to everyone who has joined us. I'm going to turn the program over to Dr. Frank and Dr. Turner.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Dr. Corey. Very much appreciate it. Dr. Turner, I'll let you begin this.
Okay, so we are talking about the art of self-care and leadership. And throughout our slides, you'll see that we're talking a lot about burnout, addressing burnout, what that looks like, and how modeling self-care behaviors can be helpful for not only yourself, but your team. So we're talking about really why self-care matters. And in a nutshell, self-care matters so that you can prevent yourself from being burnt out and having long-term success in everything that you're doing. Now, we won't say that burnout will never happen. We know that burnout still may occur. But if you're building self-care into your lifestyle and making it a norm for yourself, just as much as your morning coffee, for example, then you will be able to tailor a life that is led by taking care of yourself first, so that when you hit the pavement running, you are able to show up and be present for yourself and others.
I think when a lot of times when people think about self-care, it's like, oh, I don't have time for that. I've got so many other things to do. And the reality is, if you don't give the time to attend to that, you're not going to have the energy and the ability to do those other things that are on your list that are keeping you from doing self-care. Another thing is self-care sometimes can be things that we don't really think of. When I lived in Orlando, I had a job where I commuted an hour each way. And a lot of people go, oh, I have an hour commute. It's just exhausting. For me, it actually helped. It gave me an hour in the morning from the time I left home to to prepare for my day, to prepare the clients I had to work with. And then that last hour on the way home, yes, it was terrible traffic. It was rush hour, but I got to process my day. I got to get through all the things. And by the time I got home, I could then be relaxed. So driving in heavy traffic, not really something most people consider self-care, but it's what works for you. And so it's trying to find how this is for you.
Yeah, we want to take a moment for everyone to process. And if you care to share, please go ahead. But if not, take a second to think about what you notice about yourself when you feel burnt out, so exhausted, not really motivated to lead or do your work. And then think about what your environment of your workplace would feel like if everyone took care of themselves. And you guys are welcome to also use the chat and answer these questions as we go. You'll see moments to process pop up as we move along. So some of the keywords that we're going to be calling out as we go on is burnout. So that is the state of essentially mental exhaustion that can be caused by prolonged stress. Social contagion, which is the spread of behaviors and emotions through social interactions. Self-care, so intentional actions and practices that you can use to improve your overall well-being. Emotional awareness, so being able to identify, understand, articulate your emotions as well as the emotions of others. And resilience, of course, the ability to adapt and recover and thrive no matter what obstacles are your way. We look at this as like behavioral and emotional flexibility.
So mental health and leadership, as Dr. Corey kind of pointed out, my entire career has really been surrounding the idea of mental health. Um, and so what I've learned over the years is that the leader really does set the tone, not just for themselves, which is where we want to start with, is have you figured this out? How do you self-care for yourself? But by giving leadership towards the idea that your employees should have self-care as well. Very early in my career, I actually worked at for an agency that sent out an email that told us your personal days are for health and wellness. So if you're sick, take them. If you need to take care of your child, take them. But if you just need a day to go sit in the sun, we could take them as well. They were very clear. And that I'd never heard that before. I was like shocked that employee or a job is telling us to take time off and go sit in the sun. But they really preach this idea that if you don't care for yourself, you're not going to be able to do this job well. And so they prioritize it themselves, but they prioritize it for the company as well.
And when you are taking care of yourself, you'll need some of that time to go sit in the sun, like Dr. Frank is talking about, because when you are burnt out, it's going to be difficult for you to be able to not only manage your team, but making decisions under those organizational pressures. So, cultivating an environment where self-care is a practice that everyone can use and take that personal day or take that extra 10 minutes to really just sit and enjoy the tea that you made in the lunchroom will be helpful overall so that everyone's stress levels are not exacerbated to the point that they are, making these mistakes just because they're overwhelmed in the moment.
I think that there are a lot of reasons for leadership burnout, and they don't have to all be the same, have the same power over the individual. Unrealistic expectations are probably a pretty big one where I have to achieve, I have to do well, I have to show my boss, my employer, my whoever that I'm meeting everything, going above and beyond because it's a tight economy. Um, when we do that, when we have all these unrealistic expectations on ourselves, it's very, very easy to overcommit. To yes, I'll take that. So when people come to you and they ask you to do something, I'll take that. I'll take that, without really giving attention to the idea that I don't have time or the bandwidth to do this. Um, you're overcommitted. You have these unrealistic expectations on yourself. Then all of a sudden, we feel there's a lack of support. No one understands what I'm going through. They're piling all this work on me. Um, I don't feel supported, but at the same time, some of the unrealistic expectations and overcommitment are on me. Um, Poor work-life balance. This is the one thing I really work with clients on, is the idea of a strong work-life balance is is really important. If something goes wrong at work, at least you can go home and have the supportive, relaxing, encouraging environment there. But when both of these places are off balance, it's going to make your burnout and your ability to be a effective leader really difficult. Finally, continuous high stress. Any or all of these issues, the causes of leadership burnout, are going to continue to cause stress. Add in all the personal things that people go through on any given day. The idea of navigating crises or managing your team through these becomes overwhelming as well. So trying to find out how can I identify where the stress is coming from or where the burnout's coming from makes it a little bit easier to then identify what do I need to do to adapt.
So the impact of burnout, obviously we know that it can happen anywhere in your organizational system. But the biggest thing is that we talked about social contagions, one of the terms, we'll touch on that a little bit later. But when you are burnt out and you are stressed out and dissatisfied with where you are, it impacts everybody on the team. Because people we know are looking to leaders for solutions and for really to be like stoic in times where there may be some like high stress movement going on, especially when there's high stress going on from an organizational level. We know that, if there's policy changes that impact employees or, people aren't able to take the leave they want to take because too many people are taking at the same time, whatever it looks like, people are consistently stressed out and not having that balance that they need. So you see it happen from a top down type of perspective. And going into social contagion, there are different types of social contagion. I'll give you a chance to read over that. But essentially, social contagion looks like the spread of behaviors. If everyone can think about how COVID spread, right? You don't know where you got it from, how you got it. You just knew that you went to the grocery store and now you came back and you had COVID. Social contagion is the same type of thing when there's behaviors or emotions in a group and it impacts the attitudes and the emotions of everybody else in that environment. So, one example I like to give for social contagion is if you see a baby like laughing hysterically, it may make everybody in the room laugh, right? And that's the same thing with social contagion. When there is a disruption in your emotional state, whether swinging high or low, everybody can kind of feel that. And people's norms start adapting to that. So if you look at things like workplace contagion, for example, employee attitudes like enthusiasm or burnout can spread across teams. And a lot of times this can happen from anybody being burnt out on your team, but especially when the leader is facing burnout, because they're, like I said, they're looking for you to set the tone. So another moment to process, why do you think that social contagion is important as a leader? And of course, you guys can use the chat feature if you would like or pop in.
I'll pop in. Hey, this is Dr. Joy Stover here. I love this concept of social contagion because it is, well, obviously I like the students call me Dr. Joy because that just sets an instant uh, influence that, I'm a little bit, I can be safe, I'm friendly, let's instantly try to create trust and safety and engagement. So if I wasn't like that, then I don't know, there's a way that we can use social contagion in a really positive way. So that's what's important to me.
Yeah, and that's incredibly important because, like we said, you set the tone. So if you're setting the tone as Dr. Joy, they look at you to be that smiley, cheery person that you always are, anyways, right? They know that they can come to you into a safe space. And that's what it looks like when you're a leader. It's like, how are you presenting? And if you're having a bad day, how might that impact everybody around you? And of course, no one expects you to be perfect. No one expects you to be Dr. Joy all the time. You can be Dr. Apathetic one day, and like that's also okay. But imagine if you showed up as Dr. Apathetic every day, then people would catch on to that trend of the emotional like balance there that they have. Thank you for sharing.
Brittany, I think something that is important too about contagion is when we're leaders, we think that the things that we say and the guidelines that we have and the posters on the wall are going to get people to buy into what we expect from them, but they're watching us. And as they see what we do, they're going to model that. And so whatever we're doing, we're going to see a mirror in our people. So I think it's important to always remember that. I had a mentor tell me that once, and I'm like, but I've got this stuff on the wall and it's super powerful and important. He's like, no, they're watching you. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and that's true. You can't motivational quote yourself into behavior, right? And we all believe that, you can speak positive affirmations over yourself and they'll happen, but eventually they become a fly on the wall. So, if you're not changing those out or even your behavior is modeling those things, then people are kind of like, oh, that's just the family photo on the wall that's been there since forever. And they kind of move past it. So it's important to be able to identify what are your own behaviors and what are some of the signs and symptoms that you may be experiencing of either burnout or enthusiasm that people can catch on to. And we'll kind of move into what some of those signs and symptoms of leadership burnout look like. Emotional exhaustion is one of the bigger ones, right? So feeling drained and overwhelmed. And that can lead to something called depersonalization. I'll give you a chance to read over these and we'll go to the next slide where we'll talk a little bit about more about depersonalization. And that's something that I'm sure Denny has experienced, working with his clients with mental health. Likewise, mine is working with clients that have the depersonalization.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things about depersonalization is that it's very much on a continuum. So it's, you know, we can be overwhelmed at work and have some of these feelings where things are feeling really numb and robotic. Just like I gotta get through it. We've been working long hours. I got this deadline. But it's the kind of thing that often when that deadline passes, you're going to be able to take a deep breath, usually. And so it kind of goes away, and you don't really have the same sensation of numbness. But at the other end of the spectrum, where it becomes a true mental health issue, are people who are going through life on a daily basis, feeling really disconnected from reality, from themselves, that everything they're doing is just they're going through the motions of living, but they're not really the person doing the living. Um, so clearly, when you're at that end, there's significantly more issues than just your performance at work. We're going to see a lot more of the lower end where it's in the moment, the overwhelm, the process is happening right now. And for most people, we can get through that if it's a time limited specific thing. But when it becomes an ongoing, every day I go to work, I'm just overwhelmed every day. It's the grindstone every single day, and that person becomes emotionally numb or robotic. They're becoming unproductive. They're just going through the motions and making themselves check this box so the boss sees I've done something, as opposed to doing quality work. And that's kind of where the leadership, your ability to be a good leader can come in and kind of identify when it looks like your people are a little bit overwhelmed and take some time out to talk to them, to offer other services, to give people a chance to take a deep breath.
And when we look at depersonalization and burnout, we're looking at that just being one core component of it. So you're going to see things like emotional detachment, maybe decreased performance. And like Denny said, giving, a chance to talk to your peers and your other colleagues, maybe some people that you employ about how, there are other ways to cope with stress. And let's start with something like self-care, for example. And so these things matter because, like we said, when left unaddressed, they can impact your mental health and all like of the holistic being of yourself, but especially job performance. And once you start understanding and addressing symptoms of burnout, it can lead to better stress management and improved outcomes. So there's some strategies for recovery from burnout and depersonalization and self-care and stress management, which we're going to focus on mostly for the rest of the presentation, as well as professional support. So making sure that yourself as well as everyone in your workplace know that there are mental health resources that are available for them, as well as workplace adjustments. So making sure people have manageable workloads and clear boundaries and a supportive environment, and then addressing some of those symptoms once you see them.
Some of the reasons it's crucial are really things we've been talking about this entire time. But the sustaining this resiliency and adaptability is incredibly important in any work environment. We need to keep going forward and be able to adapt in the moment. And when you're not attending to your self-care, it often becomes more likely that you're going to be very rigid in your approach and this is how things need to be done. And so it really interferes with adaptability from your perspective, but also from what you're transmitting to your employees. The healthy work balance. There's some of that they may see, but if you're the type of boss that says, "Hey, I'm taking off early day because I have to take my kid to piano lessons," you're kind of echoing or modeling how that some of these things might work. Same thing with decision making and problem solving. These don't have to all be on your own. Oftentimes, bringing other people into the mix, talking to other perspectives, takes away some of the pressure and the idea that I'm doing this on my own, and allows your employees or your colleagues to feel part of the process as well. In building emotional intelligence and empathy, that's much more challenging. I have questioned whether you can actually teach people empathy who don't have it or not. But we do want them to start looking at how they might feel in someone else's shoes. If you were the person having to work 7 doubles in a row, what would you feel like? Um, Increased longevity. If you're burned out, most people want to get out of there as soon as they can. They're not working extra hours, not working every time, and they're trying to find another job. You can prevent burnout. People become much happier, more stable in their job. They're much more likely to stay a longer position there. And supporting mental health advocacy. Most companies have some sort of employee assistance program that typically includes mental health, but a lot of people still are scared to use that because it's through my employer. So what are they finding out? So doing some education sessions about, yes, we have these services, but they are separate from us, even though they're offered by us. And advocate for the clients to use the services they have available to them really is crucial for you as a leader. But to model this to your employees or your colleagues or the people you're leading is very important.
And we're looking at the art of self-care, which is the overall arch of this, and looking at self-care as a deliberate act of nurturing yourself, not looking at it as a selfish process, but something as just as essential as brushing your teeth, so that you can create a balance and be able to replenish yourself. So you can start by having small rituals or have grand rituals like going on a spa day or whatever that looks like for you. Hiking could be your form of self-care, right? So looking at listening to your needs and honoring the way that you need to show up for yourself so that you can have that love and compassion for other people, creating this as a daily practice. And we have a scenario of an overwhelmed professional, and essentially it discusses how this overwhelmed professional sets aside some hours just for themselves. So taking, relaxing bubble bath or finishing their favorite show or something of that nature. Personally, I create what I call pockets of peace. So that will maybe 5 minutes from the time that my tea boils, the time I let it come to roomish temperature, so I can actually enjoy it. Or doing something simple like putting on little eye patches, depuff your eyes while I'm running in between meetings so that I can have just a second for myself to savor it.
I had a supervisor who, and she was a clinician, so it's much easier for her, but she took every Wednesday and every August off for self-care. Um, Again, if you're working for other people or for companies, it's much more challenging, but she was very clear why she did it. She's like, I spend all my other days helping take care of other people and listening to their issues and their problems and containing that. I need specific time, no matter what. She's like, I love to play tennis, and usually play tennis on Wednesdays, but some Wednesdays I sit in the dark and watch TV. So I listen to what I need in that moment, but I know it's always there for me for whatever that is. And that was really powerful to me. That's something I've really been holding on to. Not that I have a day of the week I get to set aside, that would be lovely, but it does make me much more mindful in how I do this.
Yeah, and when we're being mindful, something to look at while we're sitting here is like, as we talk, what is something that you do to practice self-care or not, right? If you're not doing anything, how can you improve on this? And how are you going to build the time into your schedule? We know that in leadership roles, time is limited, right? So thinking about how you can build that into your schedule, whether that's building your pockets of peace or taking your Wednesdays off for tennis or whatever it looks like for you, starting to think about and process, what do I need to do for myself? And when was the last time I actually listened to myself and what I needed? So we have tons of strategies for self-care. We don't need to, dissect all of them, but these are just some ideas to get the ball rolling, right? So we talked about taking time off, planning regular breaks, setting healthy boundaries between work and everything else, seeking support, relaxing. If you guys want, you could put in the chat some strategies that you guys are currently using. And of course, Denny, if you have anything you want to share about what you're using, we are open ears. Let's hear it.
I think one of the things that I was thinking is not necessarily what I do, but how I react to some of these things. And there are some things that I have a negative personal response to. I mean, I am not someone who journals. And if someone were to tell me, well, why don't you just journal? That would not be I would not feel like I'm being self-cared for. But that's okay. I don't have to, I mean, it's not something I have to do, but there are other things that work really well for me. And so figuring out what works for yourself, the idea of self-care. I live in the city of Chicago, and it can be overwhelming living in a large city, but we have a bird sanctuary very close to my house along the way that I can be at in 15 minutes, and 3 minutes in the path, it feels like I'm in the woods. I don't see the city, I don't hear the cars. And just doing a 5-minute walk through there can relieve so much stress for me. So it's figuring that out for yourself, what does work. And if it doesn't, don't force yourself to, oh, let me try a journal. Maybe you're not a journaler. That's okay.
I'm the same thing with like meditation and breathing techniques. Even learning them as a therapist, I'm like, yawn, move on to the next task. But there are things that I also enjoy. I live downtown Detroit and I am on this weird hunt to find the best matcha in Detroit. So I will literally walk or run to a local cafe and then I will walk back with my little matcha and just enjoy breathing in city air, not in the winter. But those are things that I prefer for self-care rather than breathing techniques or journaling. I'm not a journaler either. So, these are some things just kind of get you thinking. What are some things that may stand out to me? Maybe breathing techniques is your jam and breathe on, but there are other things that exist out there that maybe you haven't thought about. Like, I was working with a client the other day and I told him, I said, have you decided what your hobbies are going to be? They have no hobbies. All they do is work. And I was like, have you ever tried archery? Like, have you even thought about it? They're like, well, no, I didn't even know that existed. Exactly. So thinking about different things that you could try. So staying spontaneous, allowing yourself to try new things. And knowing that you'll face continuous challenges, knowing that you'll have evolving needs, knowing that resilience is going to be needed to adapt, but also making sure that you are mindful about what you need so that you can recharge. And of course, there are more things for resilience building. So, recognize your emotions, creating that balance, celebrating your growth, et cetera, et cetera. But the biggest thing is to accept
Yeah.
vulnerability. Go ahead, Denise.
And when I was just kind of reading over slides this morning, trying to prepare for, I got this slide. And one of the things I realized about this resilience building is that a lot of these things are not something that specifically men, but Americans in general are encouraged to do. Recognize our emotions. We are not a culture that does that. And so when you're talking to yourself or people and trying to, it's very difficult at times for people to identify their emotions. I'm sure most of you have seen there's like a chart that has every little face emojis essentially, and gives the emotion associated with those: happy, sad, hungry, because we don't really understand a lot of our emotions or understand when we are in that moment of emotion. The idea of accepting vulnerability, that's not, again, not a cultural thing in our country. Self-compassion. I used to think this was a good thing. I still do, but being kind to yourself and avoiding self-criticism is kind of what a lot of people thrive on. And they're not really truly thriving in society, but that's how they go through life, I should say. And all the rest of these things, creating balance, healthy boundaries, celebrating growth. Yes, we can do those in small groups, in our families, in our small friend groups, but as a culture, we don't encourage resilience building. We don't encourage the steps. So oftentimes these are going to feel foreign. They're going to feel really off because if you grew up in a family where you were told, boys don't cry, you learn to turn off your emotions. And so trying to turn those back on can be a challenge. So just be aware that some of these things are not going to always come easily, but that doesn't mean it's not worth the time to go back and forth with it.
Definitely. And the one thing that I always tell people is self-care originally feels uncomfortable, but you're going to be more uncomfortable long term not having tried when you're burnt out. So we're talking about balance and modeling that, and really leaders who are committed to self-care are role models for their team. They can help reduce burnout across their institution by looking at how to make a more positive work environment. And that environment starts with a lot of the times morale. If you hear why people quit jobs, oftentimes it's not because of their work, it's because of the people at work and how they were unable to balance those relationships or deal with such attitude or whatever the case may be. So promoting that culture where your holistic well-being is just valued in general, it's going to be helpful in reducing the burnout and creating that positive work environment that we're looking at. And modeling can like a lot of things, such as live to hear, but one of the first things that is uncomfortable is normalizing stress. So emphasizing the importance of acknowledging, hey, we're going to have a stressful time ahead. It's the end of the quarter, et cetera, but we've got this. And normalizing those type of things, and avoid overloading yourself and other people. If they feel like they're stretched too thin, ask them like, hey, are you okay? I seen you are on 7 committees. What's up with that? Do you have time to balance, or are you really just passionate about the squirrel watching committee? That's something you're really passionate about, or do you think that's one thing you can take off so that you can, leave work on time? Or, if you see people coming in and they are coming in at 5 a.m. and leaving at 7 p.m. Well, we know that's not healthy balance, right? So encouraging some other ways that people can um, demonstrate that they are, secure in their job role without having to overstretch and overextend themselves. And having open conversations about well-being, making self-care an open conversation in things like staff meetings, for example. Where you're sending out meeting minutes, maybe attaching a book or a podcast at the end, like, hey, heard this really awesome podcast about, taking care of yourself. If you have time while you're doing your documentation, maybe you guys should listen to it. Just kind of creating that environment.
I also think if you're reading down the list, one of the things talks about promoting time management. I think that's something else that many people are really bad at, really understanding how much time it will take them to do a given task and how they can adjust their schedule to make sure that they can be not overwhelmed. Um, but where I want to go with this is oftentimes there are in-house trainings or development, that type of thing, that leaders put on trying to help their employees figure this out. But one of the biggest complaints I hear from people is, oh, we had this professional development today, but I didn't get a break from my work. So now I have spent all morning at this training, but I have all the work I'm supposed to be doing. They're not accounting for those type of things. So you're teaching people about whatever stress management or time allocation or overburdening, but you're still overburdening them by doing that. So being aware of the effect of what you're trying to do beyond just the immediacy of the training is important.
Yeah, and I think on the other side of that spectrum too, like if you have employees that work quickly and work faster than what you think the allotted time is, normalizing that downtime between projects is a normal thing. And not having, this presentation of if you're not working, then like you're doing something naughty, some people they get done very quickly and maybe they have an extra 30 minutes that others don't have. And sure, they could help out, or they could just sit for a second and clear out their inbox. And that still is work, even though it's not, being gung ho on some of this next big theme that you have going on. And one of the reasons that modeling matters is because you're setting the tone. We keep going back to setting the tone. And that's something, if you don't take anything else from this, it's how you care for yourself sets the tone of how your team cares for themselves. So when they see you engaging in things that are sustainable to your well-being, they're more likely to follow suit with that. And research supports that. Even if you're, with a group of friends and everyone is doing something to take care of their self, you'll probably adapt to some of of those systems, even if it's not exactly what they're doing, self-care will start to be important to you, and important to everybody else, because you have to kind of cultivate this culture of I matter and everyone else matters too. And downtime looks like this, stress may look like this, burnout looks like this, but self-care looks like this. And this is how I'm going to choose to do it, and encouraging people to engage in it with you. And there are so many things that we can talk about related to enhancing decision making. And we'll make sure you have the slides for all of these things, but really looking at decision making, because we know that is that your decision making skills are decreased by burnout and mental fatigue. But one thing that we think is important when you are working with your team on burnout is to encourage a team brainstorm. And we'll pause on that and let you take the rest of those home. But really looking at regular sessions where you guys can contribute ideas and encourage different perspectives for creative solutions. So maybe when you're talking about and you bring out, hey, are you guys feeling burnt out? How are you guys engaging in self-care? Maybe as a team, you can brainstorm ways that are effective for checking on one another, holding one another accountable for self-care, and making sure everyone's needs are met, so that you're not having these band-aid solutions where you're like, well, I gave them the rest of the afternoon off. So, yeah, they have the rest of the afternoon off, but tomorrow they're coming back to everything they missed the rest of this afternoon and their normal load. And you as well, if you take the rest of the day off, that is a band-aid. How are you going to help yourself and your team build in some of these things here? How are you going to help them build in time management and self-care and planning their days off? Or, when we have those interviews, they're like, if Johnny's by the printer and you notice he's frowning, have real life talks about this. How are you going to help your teammates acknowledge when they may be a little burnt out? How do you cultivate an environment of, hey, I actually do need help with this? And of course, there are other things that you can do for problem solving with your team. And this is just one example of them. And again, we'll make sure you have the slides, but making sure that if there is problem solving, like identifying burnout or identifying that there's no balance at the job, how can we identify and analyze this problem and come up with solutions together as a team? All right, moving on into Denny's favorite, building emotional intelligence and empathy.
Yeah, I think that we can become more aware of emotional intelligence and empathy. I think in the workplace, it's a pretty big challenge to try to build it. I think coming from a leadership perspective, having the leaders have awareness and understanding of it is probably really important, more so than having the people who you're leading understand it. Um, I think the big part of it, like number one, we're talking about, it's the self-awareness. It's the what am I feeling in this moment? What is this making me? Um, why am I feeling this way? What's happening? Are there patterns to how I'm feeling? Are there certain times of the day or certain tasks or certain employees or coworkers or my boss that I find myself spiking and feeling a different certain way when I interact with them? Um, and then what is that? Where's that coming from? What once you start becoming more aware and reflecting on what's causing these changes in your emotions, you can become more mindful about them and start focusing. Okay, every time I come and have to work with Johnny on this project, I find myself getting very frustrated and my patience dropping. So if I know that next time I'm paired with Johnny, it's on me to take that deep breath and realize that this is just the interaction and I don't have to respond to that. And we can move forward and have an outcome without having that interpersonal challenge as well. Seek feedback. Maybe I need to talk to another colleagues. Like, how is it when you work with Johnny? I just find it like I feel like beating my head against the wall. Is this something that's just me experiencing this? Is this something that's much more global? Looking at that and seeking feedback can help you uh, figure out how to improve or how to get better at it. Self-regulation. Um, we're not really a culture that's promoting that right now, but it is still a very wise thing to have. Controlling your emotions, particularly in difficult situations. Um, Oftentimes, um, topics come up that used to not be personal issues, and now people take everything very, very personally. And it's difficult to kind of separate that out. So pause before you respond and ask yourself, is this person coming at me personally, or is this a professional question? Or am I putting my own experience into something that should not be there? That pause is really, really important. You might hear of it, oh, sometimes you have to count to 10. Well, no one's going to take the time to count to 10. But taking a count to two, it's amazing how many thoughts you can have in a count of two, and calm yourself back down. Practice stress management. This is prior to going and working with Johnny or whomever this. Get your stress down in other ways so that when you come into contact with that stressful situation, that stressful individual, you're already at a lower place. And so it takes a little bit more to fill you up before you start to blow. And reframe negative thoughts. I'll be honest, I love reframing. I call it my superpower. I can reframe anything. Any negative thing you want to throw at me, I can find a way to reframe it. And sometimes when I do it for people, they're like, oh my God, seriously? That's but you have to find what works for yourselves. And it's very easy to get stuck in a negative mindset. It's very easy to get stuck in the idea that my boss is always riding me. Um, but if I can turn that around and think, my boss is always checking in to make sure that I have the best quality project when I'm done, I still might be frustrated, but I see why it's not that they're coming after me. It's that they really want the best. And so, however you all come up with it, this is something to practice. It is not something you're taught as an American, as a human being. We don't teach this. But it is one of the strongest skills you could personally have to be able to learn how to do that.
And there are other things too, like building empathy. Like we said, this is anything that you can build overnight with your team, but things to be aware of, right? Because oftentimes as a leader, if we have a deadline, we have a deadline, and we don't really care the emotions that are attached to it or why you were unable to, complete this. And of course, there's probably something top down that needs you to have them complete this, right? So making sure that you are building empathy and understanding others' perspectives and engaging in some of those compassionate conversations. And even when you're starting projects, like we said in the beginning, when you're pumping your team up, asking them to also brainstorm, what do you think are some barriers to us getting this done on time? And how can we set a strategy to mediate those as they, arise or before they arise so we can still have the most effective outcome? And all of these things are going to take patience and persistence and being innovative and making sure that you guys are looking at decision making and what the pros and cons are of all of your decisions as you go forward. And like we said before, this is a collective process. A lot of times, as a leader, you feel like you have to be the only person involved. But the great thing is that as a leader, you have an awesome team of support to get you all to your next destination. So involving those people and using them so that, when things are crumbling, you don't have to catch the entire team. And instead, you already have strong built relationships and that foundation of effective communication so that everyone is a part of the entire agency, building on those strategies that can help you guys regulate your emotions. And there are some benefits of emotional intelligence, like improve relationships, decision making, etc. But the biggest thing that you can leverage in the workplace is improving your team dynamics and enhancing leadership. So, using your social skills to build those relationships with your colleagues and also being able to acknowledge different emotions within the team that create a constructive solution. And maybe you hear everyone's emotions and you still take a team vote. But you're able to recognize the importance of the emotional needs in the workplace as well as your own emotional needs. Again, we're talking about you being self aware and self regulating and promoting that across your team.
I think that the idea of this burnout is really common in high stress, high responsibility roles, um, is is true, but it's more for many people, it's more momentary or situational burnout. The long-term full-time burnout is much more is much less common. But repeated moments of burnout or stress, big projects coming, deadlines coming, and that period of cooling off and then happening again has the same effect as the unending. It feels like it's always a grind at work. And if you're the person over top, seeing over top of that, not only responsible for your output, but your team, the people you're overlooking, whoever you're leading, you're also usually responsible for theirs as well. So it's very easy to take on over responsibility, making sure other people do their work to make you sure that your stuff gets done. Um, Trusting your team, being a leader rather than a micromanager is actually important. Staying on top of people, giving them the ability to do things on their own, but offering them support rather than standing over top of them watching what they're doing. Um, Increasing their ability to make decisions on their own without having to turn for everything. All of these type of things improve the stability, improve satisfaction, and help employees stick around for a longer period of time, which is the ultimate goal for many of us.
And of course, you can process this on your own time and really put this here so you can take it back to yourself to have a moment of like trying to figure out what burnout and stuff looks like for you, as well as for your team. So these are some kind of prompts that you can use in a team building exercise to, build that community. For example, there's a question: how can we create an environment where asking for help is normalized and encouraged rather than seen as a sign of weakness? So that's something you could take to round table in one of your staff meetings and just ask them, how are we doing in this area? And, offering feedback. How do you think that I'm doing? How do you think that you are doing? And overall, how do we distinguish between normal stress, burnout, self-care, laziness? Like, how are we distinguishing between all of these things and building on, this community where we can ask each other these loaded questions and let it be a safe space, or even asking them, how can leadership model healthy behaviors to set an example for, preventing the burnout in our team? So these are all just kind of some questions that you can take back and dig in later. We also talked about supporting mental health advocacy. So basically, we're looking at engaging in your self-care, and leading by example, encouraging people to take their breaks. I think at most workplaces, everyone gets a 30-minute break and two 15-minute breaks. So encouraging them to, get up from their desk and take a walk, or taking some time to, do anything that they enjoy. Watch 15 minutes of their show at their desk in their 15-minute break that they're taking, but actually encouraging people to take their breaks rather than working through them so that you guys can meet this deadline, because it's going to make them feel more replenished. And I know that when I'm able to take a break from my role, I feel like I'm have more mental clarity to attack whatever I have in front of me that day. And this can lead to stronger advocacy for mental health and resources, and as well as acknowledge and address the burnout so that you have that early intervention, like Denny was talking about, and not this lifestyle of burnout. So you're creating a like team wellness and just kind of fostering a healthier environment there. So we're also looking at social contagion in practice, and it all goes back to setting the tone, and going back and evaluating the group climate. Those questions we had a couple slides back is our good question prompts to evaluate the group climate. And then just being able to be flexible and encourage dialogue and create new norms within your workspace so that you all can practice some self-care.
And this idea of creating new norms, it may be specific to your group or your team or whatever, but it's also specific to the bigger work culture. These norms that we talk about, these things that we shine a light on them. We talk about mental health. Again, not really the norm in American work culture, and so it's something that if you're doing it, you're setting the norm not only for your current job or position, but kind of the bigger picture for your employees in their work career.
And also knowing,
Um, oh,
I'm
I'm
sorry,
sorry,
go
go ahead,
ahead.
Brittany.
Yep, taking care of yourself is equivalent to being a great leader. Because if you're making it a priority and you're setting those boundaries and you're practicing all of these things, then you can encourage those similar practices among your staff. And the moment that you start having self-awareness about where you are as far as your self-care practices, or where you are as far as being exhausted, you are able to practice that empathy for your other colleagues and help commit to self-care. And what that's going to do overall is just strengthen its own effectiveness by creating that supportive and resilient community amongst you and all of your staff persons. And we do have some well-being resources here. Of course, there are things from the American Psychological Association about well-being resources and burnout. The University of Texas has an entire like burnout work fatigue resources, and they have a when I tell you that this is the most robust list of resources I've ever seen provided. There are also like podcasts and things like Brene Brown is a famous social worker, and she talks about how to complete the stress cycle. So that means closing that out and starting on a wellness routine. And the last thing is that LinkedIn also offers a learning and work fatigue burnout collection. And on our last slide, this is kind of what Denny was talking about earlier, is that self-care for busy professionals. These are just some things that you can take with you and just start practicing some small and intentional actions. And those can impact your well-being overall. This does not have to take hours. It's about making the most of the time that you do have and then prioritizing time as you go on. Is there anything you'd like to add, Denny, before we open for questions?
Yeah, I think we should move into questions.
Before I stop share, does anybody have any questions for us?
I do.
Sure.
I have, love this content, and it's, always, um, there's just so much to reflect on, right? And so always for me, I'm thinking about, those how-to moments, and I just love to learn from others who are also in this space. Like, specifically for me, I'm constantly looking at, I think Denny, you said it at one point, like that spiked feeling when I'm with a person that I get instantly triggered, and I get that spike inside. A lot of the things I've been working about is my own self-regulation and holding space and all of these things. But the next move that I want to continue doing as I'm growing to be a stronger leader and modeling, right? Like the how then do I, like I keep running in my mind. I'd like to say, wow, Dr. Turner, sounds like you're having, say we're like heated dialogue, right? Like, Dr. Turner, I'm feeling pretty hot right now. Or, like how I would love to hear you guys model, like, how in a business meeting when you are professional with your colleagues, do we address the heat in the room? And how then do we calm ourselves down in the moment so that we can keep going and get back online?
I won't provide full details, but once upon a time, I had HR director suggest that I take a time out. And she said you can do that in your own head or step out of the room. And you may just need to say, but I need a moment for myself. So rather than saying like I'm feeling overwhelmed or we're both okay, I just need a moment and just take a step out. And 30 seconds for almost is more than enough time to lower that pressure. It's not necessarily addressing it directly, but many people have trouble addressing that kind of stuff directly, anyways. So if you just kind of own it, I need a moment, please, and just step away. And they're going to think whatever they're going to think. That's fine, but it's going to give you both a few seconds just to take a deep breath, and then you can get back into it and probably be in a very different headspace.
Yeah, and one of the ways that I like to practice this, and I've been using this a lot lately, is saying, hey, I think we've really gotten off track from our purpose in this conversation. And taking that deep breath and hopefully redirecting it. And sometimes that comes after me going, I think we've really gotten off track, in approaching it like Dr. Joy style with a smile. And sometimes that's me being just a little sassy. Like we are completely off task. I want to acknowledge your feelings, but we're off task, right? And getting what we need to be done. But whatever that looks like for you I always say, to gather myself so that I can present the best foot forward. Or even if it's like, I would like to take our emotion off the table and focus on the facts of this because a lot of times that's what you need, right? The facts of the matter are that this is what's going on and we need to come up with solutions together despite how we feel. Um, and that's a hard thing to do in a workplace, but also making time to acknowledge those emotions. And maybe that's an after the meeting thing. Maybe you take your deep breath and you redirect in the meeting, but post-meeting, you're like, hey, Brittany, can I talk to you? I really don't like how either of us handled that. And I want to make sure that we're on the same page and that I'm able to know how you're feeling and you know how I'm feeling so we can work collaboratively together.
Thank you. I appreciate that from both perspectives. It also made me think of like setting operating agreements. Like all of this content to me is like it's a new model of how we set up our teams and our committees and just our work to be able to even just naming my emotions and naming others' emotions, and even in the process of. So I find this helpful. I don't know if there's one more thing I want to say, but every bit of this is very important. I come from a space where like 20 years of not necessarily like being in a space where most people are analytical mindsets. And so there's a lot of analyzers and a lot of suppression. And I completely get that earlier concept. We were talking about that numbness. You just go to work and you feel like a robot. And those were my days of working in compliance. And so just when the daily grind of the work is just monotonous, and I didn't really have a leadership team that they just were, we never really were in this headspace of self-care. They came in at 7 a.m, they left at 7 p.m. That was just what we did. And they grind out work, and that's just life. And that was difficult for me. And that is when I set off on a personal self-development path. And that was about 10 years ago when that happened. So I'm always trying to learn and grow, because I never want to go back to that where I would go to work and I had no idea. I'd go home and I'm like, what did I even do today? I just feel like a zombie. And that is that's probably what drives me the most, is that I want to have meaning in my life and that everything is purposeful. And if it's not, if I feel bored or upset, or this is, feeling like a grind, then let's stop and do something else. And I love that we're teaching ourselves to model the behavior. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to ask any questions or care to share?
I want to just quickly highlight the link that Kelly put in the chat. It's very useful, and so go ahead and grab it before it goes away.
And also, you guys will be getting these slides in our resource guide that is on this page as well to add to that link. And I will turn it back over to Kelly because we have some more speaker series coming up.
Denny and Brittany, thank you so much for the tools that you shared with us today. They're so powerful for leaders as they mentor and care for followers to help their followers grow and contribute to the mission, contribute to the goal that they're all working together toward. So you may be familiar with our definition of leadership here at the University of Olivet. Our role as facilitators of learning is to help leaders fill their toolboxes with the knowledge and skills and abilities that they need to help influence people to move together toward a common goal. These tools that you share today are so powerful in helping people build those relationships, build trust, feel good and strong and well enough to come together and then move forward. So thank you. We're so appreciative and so happy that we'll be able to share out these ideas out to our entire ecosystem, as well as share out some new ideas that are going to be coming in the next couple months. I want to introduce you to two super exciting new speakers that are coming. Olivia Lusher is a colleague of mine. She and I work together in the academic space. She has a doctorate in leadership and has spent some time as a professor, but she's spent 20 years as a volunteer and as a caseworker and now an executive director in the senior space, in working with families who are in that position where they need to make sure that their elderly parents and relatives get the care and the support that they need to continue to flourish during that time in their life, and that everyone can move forward together. I mean, talk about a time of life with anxiety and stress and challenge. And Olivia is going to share with us, as family members, as practitioners, as organization leaders that deal with folks who are in this space, to try to help us frame the way we need to think and feel in order to successfully move forward together, and also to help us navigate those really tough conversations within our families, within organizations if we work in elder care. And she has some fantastic strategies to share. So I'm super excited that she'll be coming to join us on February 25th, again, a Tuesday, back at lunchtime. So please join us for that. And I'm also super excited that one of our speakers is here online with us. This is, I have to pronounce it correctly. Mike, do it for me so I don't mess it up.
Sorry, I was looking for the unmute. It's Mike Caselny. Thanks,
Mike
Kelly.
Caselny. Okay, this is Mike Caselny, and Mike is a leader, has been a leader for 40 years in the insurance space. He is the CEO and founder of an organization, Born to Lead, and Born to Lead equips leaders in all sectors with the knowledge, skills, and abilities they need to grow and continue to elevate their leadership performance and be able to elevate their influence in the spaces that they lead. So Mike's going to work with us in March on creating a plan. So as we go into organizations, as we go into communities, and we feel this drive to lead, we may not know exactly how to get to where we want to go in terms of being able to influence folks towards a common goal. And so Mike is going to share with us a process that he has developed, and he shares in his book called Born to Lead, Lessons in Leadership. He's going to share that process with us so that we all can be very pragmatic in creating an actionable plan so that we can continue to build our leadership knowledge, skills, and abilities. Mike, we are looking forward to working with you on March 24th, again at lunchtime here on the Boldly Lead channel. And I do have just a couple more pieces of information to share with everyone about what we're doing with leadership here on campus at the University of Olivet. So if you could flip it one more slide, please. And you can just flip through all of it so everything pops up. So I do want to share with you, we have our Master of Arts in Leadership program, which is, we are in our first year, and we have some students who are learning and growing as leaders in a 33 credit hour program where they can focus on nonprofit leadership and management, creativity, innovation, and change, or sport coaching leadership. And so that program starts every fall, every spring, and our newest start's going to be in the summer. So if you're thinking about moving into leadership, or if you've just been assigned a leadership position and you want to fill that toolbox in a way that's super practical and evidence-based, think about that Master of Arts in Leadership program. If you're already out in the leadership space, maybe you already have a master's degree, but you want to get some specific skills in your toolbox related to leading in creativity, innovation, and change. If you're in change management, for example, like Joy Lynn was for 20 years, or if you are a leader in the nonprofit space and want to grab some tools for your toolbox in financial management, program planning, governance, which is a big topic right now, helping people to be ethical and productive and effective leaders as board members, and also in the area of HR and volunteer management, making sure that we get the right people on the bus and equip them to be able to serve in our nonprofits well. And then in sport coaching leadership, we've got lots of folks who are engaged in the athletic space. And so our program chair, Nancy Van Hoosier, in the Health and Human Performance Department here at the University of Olivet, has put together just a powerful program to help coaches build their leadership skills so they can not only help their teams perform well on the field, but also help their teams learn how to lead and follow well. So those are our leadership graduate programs. So feel free to email me if you have questions about those. We can talk through those. We have our Women's Leadership Institute. We are ramping that up with some really great programs. In April, we have a summit that's open to women and allies who want to learn more about the women's leadership space. Particularly, we're focusing on equipping our student leaders with knowing themselves, learning how to network, learning how to advocate for themselves, and how to create a plan. And so Joylyn Stover is going to be leading up that event. We're super excited. And Joylyn, thank you for all the hard work that you're doing to equip our women and allies with leadership skills so that they can go out into the world and be more and do good and help others do that as well. And finally, in September, so Pat, we'll get through summer and we'll enjoy all of that, take a breather, and we're going to have our second Courageous Leadership Colloquium. We'll have 25 speakers that will be talking about courageous leadership with some actionable takeaways in how to be a courageous leader in all different areas of your life and in the world. And so we also will have a networking gathering that's completely online. So that's something you'll be able to access online. And if you know of someone who has a courageous leadership skill or experience that you think would be a great speaker for our colloquium, feel free to introduce them to us. They can send me an email, or you can introduce us via email, and we can get them on the schedule of speakers for our Courageous Leadership Colloquium. If you could flip to the last slide, please. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for leading. You all are out there doing important work. You're out there inspiring others to be more and do good. And we appreciate all that you're doing, particularly as you support the work that we're doing with students here at the University of Olivet. And if you have any questions or if we can support you in any way, feel free to reach out, and we will make sure that we send you an email with a link to our slide deck and our recordings and our resources from today. Brittany, Denny, again, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us. And for all of our participants, thank you for wanting to grow as a leader and take care of your followers so that we all can move forward together and create good in the world. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thanks, all. Nice job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sherlyn.